February 18, 1940, North Sea, 40 nautical miles west of Helgoland. Korvettenkapitän Fritz Berger, 34, from Hamburg, gripped the bridge rail as Leberecht Maass pitched through 6-foot swells. The destroyer's bow cleaved dark water, sending spray across the forward gun mount. Ice rimmed the bridge windows. Berger's breath clouded in the frigid air as he studied the darkness ahead. Could they locate the British fishing fleet before dawn, expose them? What Berger didn't know, within 3 hours, his ship would be at the bottom of the North Sea, but the enemy wouldn't sink her. Operation Wikinger had seemed straightforward during the briefing in Wilhelmshaven. Intelligence reported British trawlers operating near Dogger Bank, gathering information on German naval movements. Conter-Admiral Günther Lütjens ordered 5 destroyers to sweep the area and eliminate the threat. Simple. Direct. The kind of mission the Kriegsmarine needed after months of cautious harbor operations. Berger checked his watch. 02:20 hours. Max Schultz maintained position 300 meters to starboard, her running lights extinguished. 3 more destroyers followed in column behind them. Z-plan ships, pride of the German fleet, each displaced over 3,000 tons, carried 5 127mm guns, and could make 38 knots in calm seas. The numbers seemed impressive, 5 modern destroyers against unarmed fishing vessels. But Admiral Lütjens had made one catastrophic assumption, that the Luftwaffe would know German ships operated in the area. Oberleutnant zur See Werner Koch descended from the fire control position, salt spray frozen in his beard. Visibility dropping, Herr Kaleu, maybe 400 meters now. Berger nodded. The weather had deteriorated since they cleared Jade Bay at 1800 hours. What began as scattered clouds had thickened into solid overcast by midnight. Now fog banks rolled across the water, reducing visibility to almost nothing. Engines maintain revolutions for 18 knots, Berger ordered. We continue the sweep pattern. Koch hesitated. The Luftwaffe planes should have turned back by now. This weather, they have orders to provide air cover until 0400 hours. Berger kept his voice firm. Admiral Lütjens coordinated directly with Luftwaffe 2. Everything proceeds according to plan. Except nothing was going according to plan. The British trawlers hadn't appeared, the weather had turned hostile, and somewhere above the cloud deck, German bombers flew search patterns, looking for enemy vessels to attack. Below deck, Maschinenmat Hans Dietrich monitored the engine room gauges. The turbines thrummed at steady revolutions, burning fuel oil they couldn't afford to waste. Germany's naval petroleum reserves grew smaller each month. Every mission stretched logistics thinner. At 02:47 hours, the radio room received a transmission from Friedrich Eckholt, 3rd in the column. Their ASDIC operator reported possible contact bearing 090 degrees. Berger immediately altered course to investigate. Leberecht Maass turned east, cutting across the swells at an angle that sent shudders through the hull. Max Schultz followed, maintaining formation. The other 3 destroyers spread out to create a search line. Contact bearing 087, the ASDIC operator called through the voice tube. Range decreasing, moving slow. Berger felt his pulse quicken. Finally, the British trawlers. He ordered the crew to action stations. Gun crews scrambled to their positions. Torpedo tubes swung to the ready angle. What the Germans couldn't know, British fishing vessels were 60 miles southwest, oblivious to the hunting pack. The ASDIC contact was a submerged wreck, its metal hull reflecting sound waves like a living target. At 03:03 hours, engines from above cut through the destroyer's mechanical noise. Berger looked up but saw only the cloud base, perhaps 600 feet overhead. The sound grew louder. Multiple aircraft. Koch raised binoculars toward the sound. Should be ours, the Luftwaffe patrol. Maintain course, Berger ordered. They'll recognize us. Except they wouldn't, because Admiral Lütjens' coordination with Luftwaffe 2 had failed at the most basic level. The bomber crews received orders to attack any vessels in the designated search area. Nobody told them 5 German destroyers would be operating there. The first bomb fell at 03:07 hours. It missed Leberecht Maass by 40 meters, detonating in the water off the port beam. The explosion sent a column of water skyward. The shock waves slammed into the destroyer's hull. "Aircraft attacking!" Koch shouted. "Unknown type." Berger grabbed the voice tube. "All guns, engage targets above. Signal, Max Schultz, we're under attack." More bombs fell. One struck 50 meters ahead, showering the forecastle with water and shrapnel. The forward gun crew scrambled to identify targets in the darkness. Could they shoot down German planes before the bombers recognized their mistake? The answer would determine whether anyone survived the night. Oberfeldwebel Kurt Zimmermann commanded the gun crew amidships. At 29 from Dresden, he'd trained for 18 months on the twin 37mm mounting. Now he searched the darkness for dive bombers, knowing each second counted. There! Zimmermann's loader pointed starboard. A darker shape moved against the clouds, wings visible for a moment. The 37mm guns opened fire. Tracers arced upward, seeking the aircraft. Other guns joined in. The destroyer transformed into a floating fireworks display, orange muzzle flashes illuminating the deck. At 03:11 hours, the radio operator transmitted on all frequencies. "This is Leberecht Maass. German destroyer. Cease attack. Cease attack." No response came. The bombers continued their runs. Maschinenmat Fritz Berger, 26 from Munich, operated the starboard signal lamp. He flashed the recognition codes desperately. 3 short, 2 long, 3 short. The Kriegsmarine sequence that should identify them to any German aircraft. Another bomb exploded in the water, closer this time, close enough to buckle hull plates. The destroyer heeled to port as Berger threw the helm over, trying to evade. "Launch flares," Berger commanded. "Show them who we are." White signal flares arced into the sky, illuminating the destroyer's deck. For 30 seconds, Leberecht Maass stood revealed in brilliant light. Her gray paint scheme, the Kriegsmarine ensign, the distinctive silhouette of a Z-plan destroyer. The bombers kept attacking. They believed the British had captured German ships, or perhaps British destroyers flew false recognition signals. The pilots had been briefed that anything in this sector was hostile. Their orders permitted no exceptions. At 03:19 hours, a 500-kilogram bomb struck Leberecht Maass directly. It hit amidships, just forward of the second funnel. The explosion penetrated into the forward engine room. Dietrich felt the deck slam upward beneath his feet. The turbine he'd been monitoring disintegrated. Superheated steam erupted from ruptured pipes. The force hurled him against the bulkhead. Men screamed. The lights failed. Emergency lanterns cast red shadows across destruction. Dietrich tasted blood. His left arm wouldn't respond to commands. "Abandon engine room!" someone shouted through the chaos. "Flooding forward!" Water poured through the torn hull. The North Sea, temperature 38 degrees Fahrenheit, flooded into compartments designed to remain dry. Watertight doors slammed shut, trapping some men, saving others. On the bridge, Berger assessed the damage through voice tube reports. Forward engine room destroyed, boiler room flooding, electrical systems failing. The destroyer listed 7 degrees to starboard and increasing. "Signal Max Schultz," Berger ordered. "We're taking on water. Require assistance." Koch worked the signal lamp, but Max Schultz had her own problems. She'd taken a bomb hit forward near the magazine. Her captain fought fires while trying to maintain way. At 03:27 hours, a second bomb struck Leberecht Maass. This one hit the stern, detonating near the fuel bunkers. The explosion severed the destroyer's back third. Her propellers, rudder, and aft section separated from the main hull. While one destroyer died 400 meters away, Max Schultz maneuvered desperately. Her captain, Korvettenkapitän Gottfried Pönitz, ordered emergency turns, trying to confuse the bomber crews above. That single maneuver, designed to save the ship, would instead doom her. Because at 03:29 hours, Max Schultz turned directly into the German minefield the Kriegsmarine had laid 3 weeks earlier. The mine detonated against her port side below the waterline. Unlike a bomb which exploded with some of its force wasted in air, the mine channeled its full energy into the hull. 300 kilograms of TNT erupted against steel plate. Max Schultz buckled. The explosion tore a hole 12 meters wide. She rolled to port immediately, taking on thousands of tons of water in seconds. 2 ships, 2 different methods of destruction, both German, both killed by German weapons. How many more would the darkness claim before someone stopped the madness? The coordination failure began 6 hours before the first bomb fell. At Luftwaffe, SACU headquarters in Brunswick, Oberst Heinrich Müller reviewed mission orders for the night patrol. The paperwork specified search sectors over the North Sea. It identified potential targets. It detailed bombing procedures. It mentioned nothing about German destroyers operating in the same area. Müller had commanded bomber wings since 1937. At 42 from Berlin, he'd flown reconnaissance missions during the Spanish Civil War. He understood maritime operations. He knew procedures. He followed the orders placed on his desk. The orders came from General Oberst Albert Kesselring, commanding Luftwaffe II. They originated from a briefing with Göring himself. The Reichsmarschall wanted aggressive naval interdiction operations against British fishing and patrol vessels. No defensive posture. Hunt the enemy in their own waters. What Kesselring didn't know, Admiral Lütjens had independently ordered Operation Wikinger using the same waters Luftwaffe II considered their patrol zone. 2 German commands operating simultaneously, neither aware of the other's presence. The breakdown occurred at the coordination level. Navy and Luftwaffe maintained separate command structures. They reported to different ministries. They used different radio frequencies. They followed different operational procedures. Theoretically, joint operations required coordination through the Oberkommando der Wehrmacht. Theoretically, both services would file movement reports with OKW headquarters. Theoretically, someone would notice the conflict and resolve it. Theory failed completely. Hauptmann Josef Keller piloted the lead Heinkel He 111 bomber that night. At 31 from Stuttgart, he'd accumulated 840 flight hours on the He 111 since its introduction in 1937. His crew trusted his navigation. His squadron commander relied on his judgment. Keller received his briefing at 1600 hours. The operations officer spread maps across the table, marking search sectors with red grease pencil. The designated area covered waters from Helgoland northwest to Dogger Bank. Intelligence reports British trawlers operating here, the officer explained, tapping the map. Gather naval information. Report U-boat movements to the Admiralty. You're to locate and destroy them. Recognition procedures? Keller asked. Standard question. Always asked. Always answered. Anything in this sector is hostile. The Kriegsmarine isn't operating there tonight. You're cleared to attack any surface vessel without additional verification. That single statement, the Kriegsmarine isn't operating there, would kill 578 men. Keller's squadron took off at 1830 hours. 12 He 111 bombers, each loaded with 500-kilogram bombs. They climbed through deteriorating weather, reaching their patrol altitude of 2,500 meters by 2,000 hours. The cloud deck forced them lower. By 2,200 hours, they were flying at 800 meters, just below the overcast. Visibility remained poor. Rain squalls reduced visibility to less than a kilometer. At 02:45 hours, Keller's bombardier spotted shapes on the water below. Dark silhouettes moving through the waves. Multiple vessels in formation. Targets bearing 045, the bombardier called through the intercom. Count 5 ships, destroyer size. Keller descended to 600 meters for better visibility. The ships maintained formation, making perhaps 18 knots. Their silhouettes matched destroyer profiles. But whose destroyers? British? German? In the darkness and rain, identification proved impossible. Keller referred to his briefing notes. The sector contained only hostile vessels. His orders permitted engagement without verification. The Kriegsmarine wasn't operating there. He made his decision. All aircraft, this is lead. We have targets, British destroyers, prepare to attack. What Keller couldn't see, the recognition signals flashing from Leberecht Maass. What he couldn't hear, the desperate radio calls on Kriegsmarine frequencies his aircraft couldn't receive. What he couldn't know, he was about to bomb his own navy. The Heinkel formation split. Keller would attack from the northeast. His wingman would approach from the east. 2 more aircraft would come from the southeast. Standard anti-shipping tactics, attacking from multiple directions to divide defensive fire. At 03:07 hours, Keller's bombardier released the first bomb. It fell away, tumbling toward the lead destroyer. The detonation sent water skyward. "Hit or near miss," the bombardier reported. "Target taking evasive action." Keller banked around for a second pass. Below, anti-aircraft fire erupted from the destroyers. Tracers arced upward. The ships launched signal flares. "They're signaling," Keller's navigator observed. "Recognition codes." "British captured ships could use German codes," Keller replied. Standard German doctrine assumed the enemy capable of deception. Continue the attack. The second bomb struck Leberecht Maass amidships. Keller's bombardier saw the flash, watched the destroyer's speed decrease. Direct hit, target losing way. 4 minutes later, the third aircraft scored another hit. Leberecht Maass's stern section separated. The destroyer began settling by the stern. While Keller's squadron attacked Leberecht Maass, 4 more He 111s engaged Max Schultz. They arrived at 0315 hours, approaching from the west. Their bombardier saw anti-aircraft fire, assumed battle conditions, and began his attack run. Lieutenant Hans Becker, 27, from Cologne, flew the 4th aircraft. He'd transferred from reconnaissance to bombers 3 months earlier. This was his 8th combat mission. He followed procedures exactly as taught. His first bomb missed by 30 meters. The second hit Max Schultz forward near the bow. Becker saw flames erupt, watched the destroyer turn sharply. "She's heading east," his navigator reported, making maybe 20 knots. Becker aligned for another pass, but Max Schultz disappeared into a fog bank before he could release. He circled, waiting for the target to emerge. At 0329 hours, the destroyer reappeared. She'd turned south. Becker began his attack run, descending to 400 meters for accuracy. Then Max Schultz detonated. The explosion came from below, not from above. Becker watched the destroyer's entire midsection lift upward as the mine's force buckled the hull. She rolled to port within seconds. "What happened?" Becker's bombardier asked. "Did we hit her?" "Negative. Something else." Becker pulled up, circling the dying ship. She hit a mine. Within 90 seconds, Max Schultz capsized completely. Her hull showed briefly against the dark water, then slipped beneath the surface. Survivors bobbed in the water, calling for help that wouldn't arrive in time. The attack continued for another 23 minutes. The He 111 squadron expended their remaining bombs against the 3 surviving destroyers. None scored direct hits, but near misses caused damage and casualties. At 0352 hours, 1 pilot broke radio discipline. Oberleutnant Werner Schmidt transmitted on the squadron frequency, "These ships are showing German recognition signals. Request verification, they're hostile." Keller responded immediately. "Maintain radio silence. Continue attack as ordered. British could use captured German equipment." But Schmidt's transmission had been heard by other aircraft. Doubt spread through the formation. Several pilots broke off their attacks, climbing back to altitude to reassess. At 0358 hours, the squadron received new orders from their base. All aircraft returned to base immediately, weather deteriorating, landing window closing. The He 111s turned south, leaving the destroyers behind. They'd dropped 27 bombs, scored 4 direct hits, damaged 3 ships, killed more than 500 men. They believed they'd struck a devastating blow against the Royal Navy. The mission reports would claim success against British destroyers. The pilots would receive commendations. Only later Would they learn the truth? Maschinenmat Hans Dietrich pulled himself through the flooded engine room. Water reached his chest, temperature 38 degrees. His broken arm hung useless. Each movement sent pain through his ribs. Emergency lanterns cast red light across the destruction. Steam pipes hissed. Oil spread across the water's surface, creating rainbow patterns in the dim light. "This way!" Oberbootsman Carl Fischer waved from the escape ladder. "Move! Ship's going down!" Dietrich pushed through the water. His legs felt numb. The cold penetrated his uniform, sapping strength with each second. Around him, other men struggled toward the ladder. One sailor floated face down, killed by the initial blast. Another clutched a ruptured steam pipe, screaming as superheated vapor scalded his hands. Fischer grabbed the man, pulled him toward the ladder. "Up, up!" Fischer shoved men onto the ladder. "Don't stop! Keep climbing!" Dietrich reached the ladder. His left arm wouldn't grip the rungs. He used his right hand and his feet, pulling himself upward. Water followed him up the ladder, the ship settling deeper with each passing moment. He emerged onto the main deck at Onthridge 34 hours. Chaos surrounded him. Men ran toward the life raft stations. Others fought fires near the second funnel. The destroyer listed 15 degrees to starboard, her bow already submerged. Oberleutnant Koch appeared through the smoke. "Abandon ship! All hands! Abandon ship!" Sailors cut life raft lashings. The rafts dropped to the tilted deck, sliding toward the starboard rail. Men scrambled after them, trying to control the descent. Dietrich spotted a raft near the aft deckhouse. 4 sailors struggled to push it over the side. He moved to help, his one good arm gripping the raft's rope handle. "On 3, one sailor shouted. "Eins, zwei, drei." They shoved together. The raft tipped over the rail, falling 8 meters to the water below. It struck the surface and bounced, but remained upright. The inflation bladders held. "Jump," Koch ordered. "Don't wait for the ship to pull you down." Men leaped over the side. Some hit the water cleanly. Others struck debris or wreckage on the way down. The North Sea embraced them with killing cold. Dietrich climbed onto the rail. The water looked impossibly dark. He could feel Leberecht Maass settling beneath him, her stern already submerged. In minutes, maybe seconds, she would take her final plunge. He jumped. The impact drove air from his lungs. Water closed over his head. The cold felt like knives stabbing every part of his body. His broken arm screamed as he thrashed upward, breaking the surface. He gasped for air. Waves washed over him. He couldn't feel his legs. His wet uniform pulled him down like anchors. "Here!" a voice called from nearby. "Grab the line!" Dietrich saw the life raft, perhaps 10 meters away. A rope trailed from its side. He struck out toward it, his right arm pulling him through the water. His legs kicked weakly, barely responding to commands. The distance seemed impossible. Each meter required enormous effort. The cold sapped his strength. His vision narrowed to a tunnel focused on the raft. His hand touched the rope. He gripped it with desperate force. Other hands reached down, grabbing his uniform, pulling him toward the raft. "Hold on," someone shouted. "We'll pull you in." They dragged him over the raft's side. Dietrich collapsed onto the rubber bottom, gasping. Water drained from his uniform. His body shook uncontrollably. Around him, 11 other men crowded the raft. Designed for 8, it rode low in the water with 12 aboard. Waves washed over the sides constantly. At 3:41 hours, Leberecht Maass made her final dive. Her bow disappeared first, pulling the rest of the ship down in a rush of water and air. The stern lifted, propellers spinning in empty air for a moment, then slid beneath the surface. The suction pulled at nearby rafts. Dietrich's raft spun in the vortex, nearly capsizing. Men screamed, gripping the safety lines with frozen hands. Then she was gone. 500 meters of steel and machinery, 387 men still aboard her, all vanished into the North Sea in less than 30 seconds. Dietrich watched the spot where she'd disappeared. Debris floated to the surface, wood fragments, life jackets, bodies. The oil spreading across the water caught fire from submerged electrical shorts, creating patches of flame on the surface. "Max Schultz," someone shouted, pointing northeast. "She's going too." 400 meters away, Max Schultz rolled completely onto her port side. The mine had torn her hull open. She'd flooded within minutes of the explosion. Now her starboard hull showed above water, painted gray, standing out against the dark sea. Men clung to her exposed side. Others swam away, trying to escape before she sank. Life rafts dotted the water around her, already overcrowded with survivors. At 03:46 hours, Max Schultz slipped beneath the waves. One moment she existed, solid and real. The next, only disturbed water marked where she'd been. 2 destroyers, gone in less than 15 minutes. More than 700 men in the water. Temperature dropping. Waves building. Darkness absolute, except for patches of burning oil. Could anyone survive until dawn? The answer would depend on the 3 remaining destroyers, if they could rescue survivors before hypothermia claimed them. Korvettenkapitän Wolfgang Zenker commanded Friedrich Eckholt, 3rd ship in the original column. He'd watched both destroyers die, unable to help, while German bombers circled overhead. Now, at 3:48 hours, the aircraft had departed. Zenker immediately ordered his ship toward the survivors' position, but caution forced him to move slowly. Mines threatened. Wreckage dotted the water. Darkness concealed everything. "Searchlights," Zenker ordered. "Find survivors. Prepare rescue nets and lines." Friedrich Eckholt's searchlights cut through the darkness. The beams revealed carnage. Bodies floated everywhere. Life rafts crowded with men. Swimmers waved desperately from the water. "All stop," Zenker commanded as they approached the first raft. "Deploy rescue nets port side." Sailors threw lines over the side. Cargo nets unrolled, creating a climbing surface. The first survivors reached the nets, pulling themselves up with failing strength. Oberbootsman Franz Weber coordinated the rescue. Grabbed them as they reached the rail, medical crew standing by. Men collapsed on deck as they came aboard. Their lips showed blue. Their hands couldn't grip. Their bodies shook so violently they couldn't stand. Weber wrapped each survivor in blankets, passed them to the medical crew. "How many in the water?" he asked one survivor. "Hundreds," the man gasped between chattering teeth. "Both ships. Hundreds." Friedrich Eckholt moved between rafts, collecting survivors. Each rescue took time. Some men lacked strength to grab the nets. Sailors had to descend into the water, tie lines around survivors, haul them up like cargo. The destroyer Richard Beitzen approached from the south at 04:05 hours. Her captain, Korvettenkapitän Theodor von Bechtolsheim, had seen the aircraft attack and immediately altered course to assist. "Launch all boats," von Bechtolsheim ordered. "Find survivors before they freeze." The destroyer's motor launches hit the water. Their crews rowed between rafts and swimmers, pulling men from the sea. The North Sea temperature gave survivors perhaps 90 minutes before hypothermia caused unconsciousness. Many had already been in the water 40 minutes. Matros Klaus Werner, 19, from Bremen, operated Richard Beitzen's motor launch. He'd joined the Kriegsmarine 9 months earlier. This was his first combat operation. Now he pulled frozen bodies from the water, unable to tell living from dead until they moved or didn't. "This one's breathing," Werner called to his boat crew. "Get him in." They lifted the survivor into the launch. The man's eyes remained closed. His skin showed white as paper, but his chest rose and fell weakly. Werner moved to the next swimmer. This one floated face down. Werner grabbed the body, turned it over. The sailor's eyes stared at nothing. Water poured from his mouth. "Dead," Werner announced. He let the body go, moved to the next. The motor launch filled with survivors. Werner counted 14 men packed into a boat designed for 8. "Back to the ship. We need to get them warm." They rowed toward Richard Beitzen. Above, the sky began to lighten. Dawn approached. The visibility improved. And with better visibility came horrifying clarity about the scale of disaster. Bodies covered hundreds of meters of ocean. Life rafts held frozen corpses alongside living men. Oil slicks trapped swimmers, coating them in thick petroleum that made rescue grips impossible. By 0520 hours, as dawn broke fully, the 3 surviving destroyers had rescued 308 survivors. Leberecht Maass's crew numbered 330 men. Max Schultz carried 308, total 638 men. Rescued 308, missing 330. The math told its own story. More than half had already died from the bombing, the sinking, or the water. And many of the rescued wouldn't survive. Hypothermia killed even after rescue. Lungs filled with seawater caused pneumonia. Burns became infected. The final death toll would reach 578 men lost to German bombs, drowned in German waters, killed during a German operation against an enemy that wasn't there. Vice Admiral Wilhelm Marschall received the first report at 0615 hours. He commanded Fleet Command from Wilhelmshaven, responsible for all Kriegsmarine surface operations in the North Sea. The message arrived by emergency radio. 2 destroyers lost. Heavy casualties. Cause, aircraft attack. Request immediate assistance. Marschall read the report 3 times. Aircraft attack in German waters. British bombers couldn't penetrate that far without fighter escort, and no fighter escort meant no sustained bombing operation. He called his chief of staff, Kapitän zur See Ernst Lindemann. Get me Admiral Lutyens immediately and contact Luftwaffe 2. Find out what aircraft operated in Sector 7 last night. The answers came within 30 minutes. Admiral Lutyens confirmed Operation Wikinger. Luftwaffe 2 confirmed their anti-shipping patrol. The times matched. The locations matched. The horrifying conclusion became inescapable. The Luftwaffe had bombed their own ships. Marschall sat in silence for a long moment. Then he picked up the direct telephone to Gross Admiral Erich Raeder, Commander-in-Chief of the Kriegsmarine. "Sir, we have a situation." By 0800 hours, Raeder had informed Hitler. The Führer's rage reportedly shook the Reichschancellery windows. Hitler demanded immediate investigation. He wanted names. He wanted explanations. He wanted someone to blame for losing 2 modern destroyers to friendly fire. The investigation began that morning. Kapitän zur See Helmut He headed the inquiry commission. At 43 from Kiel, he'd served in the Imperial Navy during the Great War. He understood naval operations. He knew how to conduct investigations. What he discovered exposed systemic failures at every level. The coordination breakdown began with command structure. Navy and Luftwaffe operated independently. They answered to different ministers. Hitler had deliberately designed the system that way, preventing any single military leader from accumulating too much power. The result: neither service knew what the other was doing. He's investigation revealed that Admiral Lutyens had filed Operation Wikinger orders with the Kriegsmarine operational staff. The orders went to the Navy High Command. They remained in Navy files. Luftwaffe 2 received their patrol orders from the Luftwaffe High Command. Those orders originated with Göring's staff. They remained in Luftwaffe files. The Oberkommando der Wehrmacht, supposed to coordinate all military operations, never received notification from either service. The system designed to prevent exactly this type of disaster had failed completely. He interviewed Hauptmann Keller and his squadron. The pilots described following their orders precisely. They'd attacked ships in their designated sector. They'd engaged targets identified as hostile. They'd done everything their briefing specified. "Did you attempt visual identification?" He asked. "The weather prevented visual identification," Keller responded. "Rain, darkness, low clouds. We identified targets by silhouette and location." "Did you see recognition signals?" "We observed flares and signal lamps. Our briefing indicated British forces might use captured German recognition codes. We were instructed to attack any vessels in the sector." He couldn't fault the pilots. They'd followed orders. The failure occurred at command level, where coordination should have prevented the conflict. The investigation expanded to communication systems. Why hadn't the destroyers and bombers communicated directly? Why couldn't they coordinate in real time? The answer proved equally damning. Navy ships used different radio frequencies than Luftwaffe aircraft. The equipment wasn't compatible. The Kriegsmarine used long-wave transmitters for ship-to-ship communication. The Luftwaffe used shortwave for air-to-air and air-to-ground. A destroyer captain couldn't talk to a bomber pilot even if both wanted to communicate. The technical systems prevented it. Could better equipment have prevented the disaster? Absolutely. But procurement decisions made years earlier had prioritized cost over compatibility. Now, 578 men had paid the price. By March 5th, He submitted his report. It detailed 17 separate failures that combined to create the disaster: command coordination, radio compatibility, weather assessment, recognition procedures, intelligence distribution. The list continued. Rader read the report, then summoned his staff. "This cannot become public," he stated flatly. "Germany cannot afford to reveal this level of incompetence." The cover-up began immediately. Official casualties were attributed to mine strike and bad weather. The survivors received orders never to discuss the true cause. The bomber crews were reassigned to different units, scattered across multiple bases. Documents disappeared from files. Radio logs were destroyed. After-action reports were rewritten to blame British mines. The official Kriegsmarine history would attribute the loss to enemy action and severe North Sea storm. But some records survived: personal diaries, private letters, oral histories collected decades later. These fragments told the truth that official histories concealed. Survivors struggled with the knowledge. Matros Werner, who'd pulled bodies from the water, wrote in his diary, "We tell families their sons died fighting the enemy. We don't tell them the enemy was us." The psychological impact affected everyone involved. Hauptmann Keller requested transfer from bomber operations 3 weeks later. His commander denied the request. Keller flew 127 more combat missions during the war. He never spoke publicly about Operation Wikinger. The 3 destroyer captains who rescued survivors all received the Iron Cross for their actions. The ceremonies emphasized their bravery under fire. Nobody mentioned the fire came from German aircraft. The operational consequences reached beyond individual trauma. The Kriegsmarine immediately revised coordination procedures with the Luftwaffe. New protocols required direct communication between operational commanders before any joint service operation. Radio compatibility became a priority. Engineers developed new equipment that allowed ships to receive Luftwaffe frequencies. The changes took 9 months to implement fleet-wide. Recognition procedures changed completely. Ships received new pyrotechnic signals that couldn't be confused or duplicated. Aircraft crews underwent additional training on German ships' silhouettes. Intelligence briefings became mandatory before every mission. But the fundamental problem, competing command structures, remained unchanged. Hitler refused to unify command. The services continued operating independently. More friendly fire incidents would occur throughout the war, though none as catastrophic as Operation Wikinger. The cover-up extended to families. Parents and wives received standard notification. Killed in action against enemy forces. The phrase covered every type of death, from heroic battle to friendly fire to simple accident. Frau Emma Dietrich, Hans Dietrich's mother, received her notification on February 23rd. The telegram provided no details. Her son had died serving the Reich. That was all she needed to know. She never learned he'd survived the sinking, only to die of hypothermia in a life raft, killed by German bombs that shouldn't have fallen. The truth remained classified until 1968, 8 years after her death. The replacement destroyers took 18 months to build. Germany's industrial capacity couldn't quickly replace modern warships. The loss of Leberecht Maass and Max Schultz created a gap in destroyer strength that affected operations throughout 1940 and 1941. Planned operations were postponed. Naval raids into the North Atlantic proceeded with fewer escorts. Convoy protection became more difficult. The operational impact of losing 2 ships rippled through the entire fleet. Admiral Lutyens continued his career despite the disaster. He commanded the battleship Bismarck during her fatal sortie in May 1941. When Bismarck sank, taking Lutyens with her, some sailors privately wondered if Operation Wikinger had haunted him. Göring never publicly acknowledged the Luftwaffe's role. His service had bombed German ships. His failure to coordinate with the Navy had killed hundreds. But in his reports to Hitler, he blamed the Kriegsmarine for operating in Luftwaffe patrol zones without notification. The blame game continued for months. Each service defended its actions. Each pointed to the other's failures. The truth that systemic problems had combined to create disaster remained obscured by bureaucratic self-protection. Between February 18th and March 1st, 1940, Operation Wikinger resulted in 578 confirmed deaths, 2 destroyers destroyed, and 3 damaged. This represented nearly 20% of Germany's modern destroyer force eliminated in a single operation without enemy contact. The loss impacted German naval strength more severely than any British action to date. The Royal Navy's home fleet hadn't sunk a single German destroyer in the first 6 months of war. German bombers had now exceeded British naval achievements. The operational impact cascaded through subsequent operations. The invasion of Norway, planned for April 1940, proceeded with reduced destroyer strength. The Kriegsmarine could spare only 10 destroyers for the northern landings instead of the planned 12. This shortage contributed to the disastrous First Battle of Narvik, where British destroyers sank 8 German ships. Strategic planners recognized the vulnerability. Admiral Raeder submitted a report to Hitler in March 1940 detailing Germany's destroyer deficit. The analysis showed Germany began the war with 22 modern destroyers. Britain possessed over 100. Losing 2 to friendly fire made the disparity catastrophic. Hitler ordered accelerated destroyer construction, but shipyard capacity limited production. Building a modern destroyer required 12 to 18 months. Training crews took another 6 months. The losses from Operation Wikinger couldn't be replaced quickly. The tactical lessons proved equally significant. The Kriegsmarine implemented new procedures requiring pre-mission coordination with all services. Operations staff created joint planning cells where Navy and Luftwaffe officers worked together. Radio equipment compatibility became a priority procurement item. Yet the fundamental command structure remained unchanged. Hitler's deliberate division of military authority persisted. The services continued competing for resources and prestige. Future coordination failures became inevitable. The cover-up succeeded remarkably well. British intelligence learned of the disaster within weeks, but German security prevented details from leaking. The Nazi propaganda machine attributed the losses to British mines and severe weather. Most Germans believed the official story until decades after the war ended. Survivors carried the truth silently. Hans Dietrich recovered from his injuries by May 1940. He returned to service aboard the cruiser Prinz Eugen. Throughout the war, he told no one how Leberecht Maass truly died. His family learned the full story only in 1972, when German military archives declassified Operation Wikinger documents. Could other nations learn from Germany's mistake? Apparently not. Similar friendly fire incidents occurred throughout World War II. American bombers sank British destroyers in the Mediterranean. Soviet aircraft attacked Soviet submarines in the Baltic. Japanese destroyers shelled Japanese positions on Guadalcanal. The pattern repeated because the underlying causes persisted. Service rivalry, communication failures, command structure problems, recognition difficulties. These factors existed in every military, creating conditions for fratricidal violence. Modern militaries study Operation Wikinger as a cautionary tale. War colleges analyze the communication breakdowns. Leadership courses examine the coordination failures. Safety officers review the recognition procedures. Yet friendly fire incidents continue. During the Gulf War, American aircraft killed more American soldiers than Iraqi forces did. In Afghanistan, coalition forces repeatedly engaged each other. Technology improved. Training advanced. But the fundamental problem, combat confusion, remained unsolved. The destroyers' graves lie in 42 meters of water, 40 nautical miles west of Helgoland. The wrecks remain largely intact. Leberecht Maass sits upright on the seafloor, her hull broken where the bomb struck. Max Schultz lies on her side, the mine damage clearly visible. German law protects both wrecks as war graves. Diving is prohibited. The 578 sailors remain entombed in steel coffins, killed by weapons bearing German markings, destroyed by aircraft painted with German insignia, sacrificed to coordination failures that command structure made inevitable. Their families received medals. Their names appear on memorials. Their deaths were honored as combat losses. But the truth, that they died because their own military couldn't coordinate basic operations, remained hidden for 28 years. The final irony, the British fishing vessel's Operation Wikinger sought to destroy never existed. Intelligence had misidentified a Norwegian coastal convoy as British trawlers. The destroyers hunted phantoms. The bombers attacked ghosts. 578 men died pursuing targets that weren't there. 578 sailors lost, killed by German bombs, seeking British targets that didn't exist.